Hey, what's up everyone? Nick here with The Last Coat. I'm just going to show you how to do a little bit of wet sanding. So we're going to do 1000, 1500, 2000, and 3000. I'm going to quickly show you how to do this. This is the hood that we've used for a lot of our testing and stuff. So it was already oxidized and we've kind of polished it out, but we've never actually sanded it. So now I'm just going to do a small box here on basically the worst section of the hood. You can see how bad it is at this point, even when I throw a LED on there. It's horrid. So we're gonna try to fix this up here and get it cleaned up as much as we possibly can for some more tutorials for y'all. So let's get started. So first, I have my sandpaper actually soaking in here. We want to get it nice and wet. You can use this stuff dry, but it's, in my opinion, it's easier to do it when it's wet. So we have a sanding block here, which is nothing fancy. It is just a 3M regular sanding block. I have cut it down for smaller areas, and I think it's a little bit more control using a smaller piece, so that's why I have that done. We'll put a little bit of water on the surface here. Inside the bucket that everything is soaking in, there's Dawn soap in there as my lubricant. You can use palm olive, any type of dish soap will be just fine. So I'm putting my 1000 on my sanding sponge here. And now we're just going to start moving across the surface lightly. We aren't trying to dig in, we're just trying to let the sandpaper level the surface. So when you sand, you remove clear coat. So don't get confused here. We're actually thinning the surface down to bring it back. So we actually have to basically destroy it to bring it back to a lustrous finish. Now I'm going to flip to my other side of the sandpaper. The sandpaper gets clogged up. So now I'm going to do a couple of light strokes across the whole entire thing here to again level the surface. Okay, so now we're going to move on to the 1500. And I'm actually just going to wipe the surface clean here so you guys can now see how much of a haze we have actually put on the surface. So now you can see all the gloss is gone. We have literally grayed the surface. So now, like I said, we're going to move into the 1500 grit. Now the 1500, what this is called is stepping it out. So the 1500 is now going to finally remove, well maybe not so much remove, but finally sand down and make these 1000 grit imperfections not as bad. We're kind of ultimately, scratches are kind of like this is the scratch here. When we sand and polish, we roll it down like this, and then as light hits it, we don't see it as much. So even if there's a scratch still there, we can kind of hide it and conceal it by rolling the edges of the scratch down. So not everything is removable. If it's through the clear coat and down to the base coat, then is what it is, and you're not going to be able to remove it. But if you have clear coat left, you can do things like this to bring it back. Now I'm going to go at a little bit of a 45 against those scratch marks that I put in originally, the sanding marks. Now this is going to, again, make that edge not near as bad. So we're going to kind of roll it down by going here at a 45-degree angle. And again, I'm not using a lot of pressure, just allowing the sandpaper to work across the surface. Some people may do this one-handed. A little bit easier for me to do it two-handed. It's kind of how I learned when I was younger, so it's kind of what I do. There's probably a lot of different techniques to doing things. Whatever works for you, definitely keep doing that if that works for you. Just adding a little bit of more lubrication to the surface here. Okay, now we will wipe this off. And again, each different grit here of sandpaper that we go through is going to level the surface even further and smooth out the scratches left over from the last sandpaper. So again, you can see the surface is all gray and hazy. You can actually see our sand marks now going like this. And I don't see as many that are actually moving like this from our first sandpaper. So looks like we got most of them out. Yeah, so now we're going to move on to the 2000. And some people actually just wet sand with 2000. 2000 is pretty fine in all reality. So for most stuff, if you're ever like worried, you can always just start with 2000 and kind of see where you're going. And if you also just seen where it hung up there, because we didn't have enough lubrication. So if you kind of lift up a little bit and grab a puddle, you can kind of get some lubrication back under the sandpaper there and help you out. You can see all the slurry here that is built up and flung everywhere. This is not a clean process, just so you're aware. If anyone thought it was. So again, now you can see how much grayer the surface actually is. No gloss at all, but we are removing the sand marks from each step here. So now it is getting much smoother. Even when looking at it, there's a lot less scratching to the naked eye here. So that's what we want to see going on. Now we're going to move into the 3000 grit. This sandpaper actually looks a little bit different. See, this is like what the 1500, 1002 looks like, and then this is the 3000. It's more foam. So again, we're still going to use our sanding block, and I'm actually going to grab the bigger one because I'm not going to cut this one down. And this one actually holds a lot more water for you when you're actually sanding, so it's almost a little bit easier. Now again, just letting the sanding block and the sandpaper do the work. Work this edge down here a little bit better. Now the other thing too, short tiny strokes are okay as long as you know what you're doing, but when also sanding, longer strokes are better because we don't want to dig down into the surface. And also we don't want to push in with our fingers on the sanding pad, because that's just digging in and we're actually creating grooves when sanding. So we want this to stay as true and as flat as possible to the surface when we're sanding. So long strokes here tend to allow for this to stay flatter and truer to the surface. Again, if you do small, tiny ones, that's okay too. Just, if it works for you, that works for you. Again, this is you know, a little more old school method here that is a little more tried and true. Now, once I get this to the point where I feel like I have most of the sanding marks removed with this 3000, I'm gonna go right into hitting it with the rotary. And I think we're good. It feels relatively smooth to my experience, so. And again, each step should take out the sand marks from the last step. So we should see less abrasion in the surface area. And again, just from back here, it already looks like we have a lot of the sanding marks gone with the 3000. So we're just gonna go right into the rotary. As you can see, the surface is really, really gray now. So like I said, you really got to mess it up before you can make it look beautiful. There's no doubt about that. So the total art here. And once there's no clear coat left, you can't do this kind of stuff. So if you have the benefit of having clear coat, you can get this done. Okay, so I'm going to use the last cut here from the last detail Nevada. And I'm going to just put a couple of drops, not a lot needed. Just a little bit there in the center, one here, one here. Then I'm going to take my, it's over here, one sec. This is our tool for clean outs on the wool pad. And I'm just going to jam it into the pad here. A little less fling, probably still gonna fling a little bit, no doubt about that. Rotaries are a little messy. Some guys are really, really talented with them. They can throw a bead down and not even allow this stuff to fling. I'm a little bit more messy with it, but. Sorry, hitting the camera now too, there we go, okay. Now, if any of you are wondering on speed, there's 600 is the lowest. That's where I'm gonna actually start it so I don't fling as much. And then I'm gonna step it up somewhere around 1400, maybe even right there around 1600. But we're gonna stay right around in those areas. Spread the compound out because it's a diminishing abrasive. So as we polish, we break it down further. So if we can just get some more out onto the areas that we're not going to hit directly at first, it will allow us to polish over here too. So now let's get going. And now we're gonna step it up. Let's go right to 1400. And as you can see, we're achieving gloss. Got a little hop there. See how much gloss we got right back into that surface there. Crazy. Now we're not done. I don't think we're done just yet. Which I actually forgot a microfiber, so grab one of those too. You see we still have some swirls on the surface. That's expected. I'm no master with a rotary and a wool. I'm not gonna tell you I'm gonna finish the surface out that way. But we have a massive improvement compared to where we were. So now we're going to grab the roops. And I think I'm going to actually use the last cut again, because I think there's some more I can still get there with the yellow pad and being a little bit aggressive right now. That's the cool thing about this compound. You can choose your aggression by being rotary, DA, as well as going from wool, microfiber to foam. Then you have the massive options in foam on compounding, or cutting, and polishing, and all that. So here we go. I got a little bit of water in this pad here. Well, nice and speed 6. Dropping speed to 3. This is kind of going to act like a polishing because we're now dropping speed. We have a more diminished abrasive here with the polish effect. Again, versatility out of this product. We're going to wipe our polish clean. It looks like we've achieved a massive difference here. We actually have. And I'm not going to say we're done at all here. So this might be okay with a lot of people. I mean, we've changed the surface a lot, so no disrespecting it. We're just going to take it a little bit further with the Sonax Perfect Finish here, but I need to grab another pad. Actually, we're just gonna put a different pad on the 21 millimeter throw here. Go with an orange foam. Okay, so now we're gonna go with the perfect finish here and try to really refine this down. Oh, it's way too much. I have to take some of that off. It's kind of hot out here today. These bottles are all pressurized. Okay, so that's about how much I'm going to start with. Now this one here, I polish out at 3 when I use this and this combination of a step out. Oh, plug this in. Alright, now let's wipe that off. Now also this hood came out of a junkyard too, so it wasn't off of a nice car. It was actually pretty heavily beat up, so as you can tell obviously by the way this thing looked. And pretty crazy how much clarity we came out of there. And you can actually still see our sanding marks down here, that because the tape was in the way, we weren't able to cut them all out. So when we remove the tape here, I'll actually be able to cut those out. But as you can see, quite the difference. So I hope I could help some of you all with restoring some paint here. I learned in a body shop when I was 16. That was where I got my start, and I've always been into cars and stuff and detailing. 35 now, so I've been doing this stuff for quite some time. Like I said, if there's clear coat left, you can fix it. If there's not clear coat, well, you're at a body shop and you're repainting. But either way. Now, actually, you know what? Let's pull off the tape here before we cut this off. Let's clean off the surface around it and see how bad it looks. Okay, let's move this stuff. This is just DI water, if you're wondering. Some heavy compound. Grab some rubbing alcohol to get rid of some of the compound. And I got a little water in it, broke it up. All right, let's get the other side cleaned off here. Now I'll grab some rubbing alcohol. Wipe that area down. Obviously, not the most effective way here. I don't recommend anybody to do this, but I'm just going to use a shop towel here. So now that we have pretty much most all of the polishing oils off, you can see what we have. See what it looked like. Into that. That's what it looked like. We're into there. So, pretty massive turnaround. Again, this hood came out of a junkyard, so it was pretty thrashed. And then we did a lot of chemical testing on it, and we beat it up pretty good. So, I think we've got a pretty good turnaround here on where we've come back with. So I hope that can help some of y'all. Let's maybe do a little pan across here so you can see. Just how different, actually, just get you out of there. That's not a great light to be using, but it does show the oxidation really well. So, and that was what we had all in here. So we got rid of quite a bit. Here's an LED coming into the surface. And you can see the tiny pitting over here, but they're kind of hidden by the scratching and the swirls. And then when we come in here, you can actually clearly see them under the LED. And that's stuff you're just not going to really be able to get rid of because you don't want to thin the clear coat down to nothing. And these are little air bubbles and solvent pop inside the clear coat that have caused it to basically make little bubbles. So that's what that is.